So you've got a great website. Your marketing team spends hours driving visitors to it and nurturing them into leads. And your sales team spends hours collecting, qualifying, organizing, and chasing those leads. Sales wants to focus on what they do best, selling. And marketing wants to get on with what they do best, creating innovative campaigns. But how do you make both teams happy? The solution is marketing automation.
Hi everybody, I'm Butch Stearns of the Pulse Network.
Hey everyone, I'm Steven Saber, CEO of the Pulse Network.
And welcome to CMS-Connected, the web content management industry's only news commentary show. If you watch this show often, you know that's normally Scott Lee were in that seat, but we got rid of Scott and brought you in.
You big shoes to fill, Butch.
Yes, you do have some big shoes to fill, but you're excited to be here.
Incredibly excited to be here. I love this show. I love everything it's all about.
Quick comment about the subject of today's show, open source versus proprietary.
A debate that's been going on for a long time, as long as I can remember. A debate I think is going to go on for a lot longer and continue to go on. But to me, what's fascinating about it is the passion of the people involved.
And we do have passionate people involved in this show. We have Bryan Soltis from Kentico from the proprietary side. We also have Arjé Cahn from Hippo, the co-founder and CTO. And Sonny Lenarduzzi in our Spotlight segment is going to review Bright Spot. But before we begin and get into our news headlines, Steven Saber and I, let's give thanks and compliments to our lead sponsors here on CMS Connected. They are Falcon Software. The people at Falcon Software can provide you with the expert advice and integration solutions for all your creative web design, content management, digital marketing, and e-commerce, social, or mobile needs. And Digital Clarity Group. DCG is a research and advisory firm focused on navigating organizations through the digital transformation process. All right, time for our headline segment here on CMS Connected. You ready, Steven?
I'm ready, Butch.
All right, let's dive into the first story, which has to do with Apple and Apple's support of ad blocking that may end up, according to this story, upending the entire way that the web works. Let's talk about the story. Apple is coming after ads. At its Worldwide Developers Conference a week or so ago, Apple demoed iOS 9, showing off a smarter Siri, a more useful wallet, but also showing off that you can block ads. So let's dive into this a little bit. First of all, blocking ads is nothing new.
Blocking ads has been around for a long period of time.
Right.
It's been something that people could download, they could get add-ons, they could do it any way they want to.
So let's talk about from the advertising perspective, from that industry, from if you're a company that are buying ads, and the model of advertising, what this does with Apple now saying you can block ads.
Well, with Apple getting into it, it makes it really interesting, right? Because now all of a sudden they're going to start to try to change and control the game, right? That's been their mission, is control and own the platform, own the world you develop in. Well, for a lot of these companies, that is their business model, right? Their business model is ad buy, they're ad supported. So for companies that are in the content game, they're in the business of pushing out content and driving all their revenue through ads. On the flip side, if you're trying to reach that customer, a lot of times people are still doing it through ads. And if this becomes something more the norm, if they start to say, wait a minute, we're supporting it and making this possible, all of a sudden that's going to change the model.
So what do you like or not like about Apple doing this now in the latest version of their iOS?
Well, what I like about it is the fact that, it speaks to what Apple's always been about, right? Apple's been about owning and controlling the platform and owning the user experience. They're known for great user experiences. You know for a fact that ads are a bad part of a user experience. Users don't like it. So Apple's reaching out now and saying, look, I'm going to address that. The other side of it is they're saying, look, I want to get people away from it. It's referenced in the article, away from the web and onto the mobile. Get them on the platform. They want the apps. That's why they're doing their own streaming. They want to own that user experience, every single part of it. That's the exciting part. The hard part, what I don't like about it, is now they're saying, okay, we're going to disrupt a business model that a lot of people who we work with are basically built on, and it starts to say, okay, and they've done it before, but they've done it in a way that hasn't been so, hasn't really accepted a different way of doing things that could potentially be very damaging to people.
So go back to the mobile part of it. What do you think? Again, this is Apple, and they may allow you to block ads, and what does that do to the mobile part of it?
Well, it increases the experience because now all of a sudden you've got a much easier way for that experience to happen. You've got an easier way to make that happen as a user. So as a user, I'm a happier customer of Apple. I'm happier with my experience, which is important for Apple because, again, they're competing for that customer. They're competing with the Samsungs and everybody else in the world. They're competing with Google.
But I'm a publisher. I'm an entertainment site. I'm not happy about it.
You're not happy because now all of a sudden you're saying, how am I going to make money? And if it goes far and this continues to happen and this move continues to happen, I've got to come up with new and unique and different ways to make money. I've got to change my business model, which is something we've been talking about a long time in the media and publishing world, and we have yet to really find a sustainable, strong, long-term model that works in conjunction with this level of distribution and content.
Final summation of this story. So you said it best before. Apple wants to own the user experience and, have you get their hooks in you to do that. Is this another step towards doing that, or are they taking a risk here?
Oh, they're not taking a risk at all. They're accepting and acknowledging and basically buying into what people are looking for. And now they're saying, I will make that experience better for you. They're doing exactly what you would expect them to do and doing it well, I'm sure. And that's going to change the way things will happen.
All right, our next story here on CMS Connected in our news headlines segment has to do with Episerver and Ektron. Episerver taps Ektron roots in its new release. Stockholm-based Episerver flexes its Ektron muscles in its first major release since a private investor merged the company with Ektron earlier this year. Let's talk about it. Episerver is, and they claim in their latest version of their digital experience cloud that it advances the strategy established through the merger by extending the customer's existing investments in advanced web content management, enterprise connectivity, and enabling search and digital commerce. What's your first take on this? I mean, this merger happened at the beginning of the year. It's under the Episerver name now. How does this work for the merge?
Well, when you do any type of merger, when you're looking at any type of acquisition, you look at the first 90 to 120 days.
Yes.
And you say, what did the company do in that 90 to 120 days, and what statement is that making to the market? And what I love about it is a couple things. One is that they went out and they basically did a roadshow. They visited 2,000 customers. They went to, I think it's 5 different continents, and they had the message. They said, what are you looking for? They asked and they acknowledged what the customer was asking for. The second piece is this, that they basically releasing a new platform, and they're saying, okay, wait a minute, we are not going to give up on our platform. We're actually going to go further. We're going to bring some of those things you've asked me about to the fold, and we're going to show it to you because we're releasing something right away. We're not going to wait. We're not going to take our time. We're not going to sit back. We're not going to think about it. We're going to make it happen.
Okay, so obviously the proof is in the pudding with this, but let me ask your opinion about it. There's a merger here, right? The merger happens, so they're going to tout what they're doing. So James Norwood, the Executive Vice President of Strategy and Chief Marketing Officer at Episerver, says this. Here's his quote. This is the first of several releases that will gradually evolve to adopt the best of both the Ektron and Episerver world. Combine that with, this merger was all about heading towards the cloud. Again, they very much have to prove this. But the messaging so far is very strong. And we're taking the combination of the strength of both companies, putting them together and getting you to the cloud.
And if you think about it, oftentimes you say when two companies come together, does one diminish? Does one just get wiped out? Are we buying customers? Are we buying revenue? What are we buying when we buy it? Here they're saying, look, we're going to take the product. We're going to bring the best of both worlds together. We will demonstrate that to you in version 1. We're not going to wait to have the next iterations to do it. And we're going to go out and we're going to talk to the customer. We're going to embrace it. So you're right. The proof's in the pudding. Will it continue to go? We don't know. Did they take the right first step and get it started? Absolutely. This is what you want to see from a company that's been backed. They're backed by a really strong provider. They're backed by a really good fund. And now they're taking the steps to say, look, we're not going anywhere. We plan to be here as a player.
So a final comment about this story. Again, you're the CEO of the Pulse Network. A big part, in my opinion, of what you do nowadays is how you announce it, how you tout it, and what you do. So give us some insight into what's going on behind the scenes with this. In other words, when's their next announcement? When's their next iteration? When do they say, hey, we are doing it right?
Well, so it's a good point because we've gone through this acquisition process, a few times. The question is now, what do they have to do in the next 90 days? So you always think about this in short-term cycles. You're thinking about quick bites, but they need to continue the flow. If anything, you want to increase that level of volume and connectivity and connection, and you want to keep the message going. If they go silent, Butch, that's scary. That's what you want to watch out for. That's when you might say, oh my gosh, there's something else going on. If they continue the flow of information and they continue moving in the right direction, that's a strong sign.
You are watching CMS Connected. I'm Butch Stearns of the Pulse Network. This is our news headline segment. Story number 3 on this edition has to do with a recent report that came out from a consulting firm called Software Advice. And in this report, they took a good look at how businesses use ECM enterprise content management systems and their common pain points. The end result of this, Steven Saber, is a pretty good roadmap outlining what CMS vendors can do to win the hearts and wallets of their customers. Now, let me give you a few details about this survey, and then I want your comment about it. The results are based on the responses of 110 US-based, not international, full-time employees who use content management systems every day. And while the workers value the systems themselves, they're continually frustrated by, and as we look at this chart, the lack of integration, inability to customize, to meet individual needs, and inadequate training. So lack of integration, inability to customize, and inadequate training. So these 110 people who are involved in CMS on a daily basis, nearly half of them, for example, let's start with the first one, are frustrated by the lack of integration. What does that tell us?
Well, it tells us actually there's really positive news and there's really scary news here. The first thing it tells us is that the software that they're using is so critical to the organization. It's become the heartbeat of what we're doing and what we're all about. So therefore, the ability to plug it in, integrate with other things has become that much more important than it used to be. That's really important. The problem is the struggles they're having for integration. You hear that about a lot of software pieces, but some of them don't become mission critical applications. In this case, where this is becoming more and more mission critical, that level of integration is something that's important, and it's something to watch out for as you're looking at different vendors and deciding who to work with.
So when I look at the results of this too, it says to me, again, oftentimes there's a disconnect with people and their customers. You think you're providing what they want, but you've talked to 110 people involved in CMS on a daily basis. And again, nearly half of them are telling you there's a lack of integration. There's the inability to customize to meet individual needs, and there's inadequate training. I mean, that should be an eye-opener to you that maybe you're not serving your customers.
Well, and if you ask any vendor, I bet you they say, we do integration great. Right. And what do you mean training? We do that. We do all kinds of training. And so part of it is really understanding, okay, what am I missing? To your point, where's the gap here? I'm saying this, you're saying this, and we're missing each other. The reality is we do think we serve what you're looking for, but you don't think we do. We need to understand why. And to your point, the problem is that customer evolves so fast. They're moving so quickly. Their needs, their wants, their desires are changing so quickly that you need to stay on top of it, because what you built yesterday in terms of models and process may not be there for today, and that's where the problem is.
Well, and a final point about this, you used the term roadmap, that this was a survey that was put out by Software Advice. They're drawing some conclusions, but the end result, according to them, is a good roadmap. And it really is, because one of the things I found fascinating is when you look at the respondents and the questions they asked, there were two things that people were concerned about more than anything else: digital asset management and collaboration. Oh, surprise, surprise. Companies need to manage their digital assets better, and they need to collaborate with groups within their organization and groups outside their organization.
It's no surprise at all. And what I liked about the report was basically, if I'm a vendor, it's saying to me, okay, what problems do I need to answer? If I'm going into a sales call, what are the questions I want to make sure I've answered in that sales call? They're outlined very clearly for me. On the flip side, if I'm a customer, I'm saying, how am I putting together an RFP? It puts out a very clear set of questions you want to ask yourself to say, am I concerned about this? Am I concerned about that? And that will help me to make sure as I'm choosing a vendor, which vendor I want to work with, which supplier I want to work with, which ones don't.
All right, which brings us to news item number 4 in this edition of CMS-Connected, which is in our headline segment. And this story has to do with OpenText. Speaking of digital asset management, they are the leader in enterprise information management, EIM. The story is titled Signs of Problems at OpenText. But what's interesting about it, and in full disclosure, I think it's fair for us to note this, OpenText is a customer of ours here at the Pulse Network, and we deal with them, so we know a lot of the ways they think, and we work with them. So let's get that out on the table first. But in this story, it talks about some of the layoffs that they've had. It talks about some of the problems they've had. It talks about jobs, and it talks about they're based in Canada. On June 1st, CBC News announced that OpenText would have to replace any jobs that it might cut in Ontario, on top of creating some or all of 1,200 new jobs in the province in order to access any of the $120 million grant extended to it by the province in Ontario last year. So growing pains for a company like OpenText. To me, what this story is all about is OpenText, like a lot of companies, needs to keep up with the cloud. Everybody does, right? You need to send that message to you because your companies are looking for solutions in the cloud. When you look into this, what do you see as the gist of this story? Well,
so I see a couple things. First of all, I look at it as a CEO and I say, is this really a conversation? And quite honestly, I don't think it is.
Why not?
Because you're laying off, I mean, it may sound inappropriate. I'm laying off 5% of my staff. This is a company that buys companies like crazy. They've been on an acquisition spree like crazy. And they've got redundancies, I'm sure, on the organization. They've got to make some changes. So that doesn't alarm me. That wouldn't scare me. And if I'm looking at the CEO, I'm actually saying maybe they're making good, smart decisions. I would want to look deeper. If I think about it from a business point of view, you're right. Their business is going through, I often talk about business model changes and what that looks like. The transition to the cloud is something really important that everybody's challenged with and says, okay, how do I look at if I'm a traditional business model versus a new one? In the software industry, how does that change, and what does that change in terms of staff I need, in terms of revenue models, client models, and so on? So if they're taking steps in that direction, I would say, okay, these guys are great. This is moving in the right direction. So it doesn't scare me. I wouldn't think, I actually think, my friend from DCG, going back to Scott, had said, I love a quote here. Based on some of the reactions I've heard, you think OpenText's very foundation is crumbling and the company's headed for oblivion. Please, not happening. And I think that's the truth. It's a story because it's changing, but I'm not sure it's a story in the way that they're representing it.
So let's wrap it up with a comment about Connie Moore's article in Digital Clarity Group and more about what she said about that. I mean, again, you're painting a picture. These are growing pains that a company like OpenText is going to face. Are you saying that they grew too fast?
No,
necessarily?
I'm saying it's typical in a company that grows through acquisitions that this is what they do. I would look at it, there's at the bottom of this, it refers to the fact that the CEO is returning to work full-time after a planned 100-day leave of absence because of illness. That could be a really good thing. That's something I'd watch out for. I'd say, okay, what will he say or she say? What will they say when they come to the table, and what will they say when they go? What their message will be? That's what I'd want to look at. I'd say, okay, how's that going to affect it, and what's the story they're talking about? And I'd say, okay, how are they positioned?
Yeah, and Gabriel Leung, an analyst with Beacon Securities, who's quoted in his story, which, by the way, the story is on Business Financial Post, sort of backs up what you said. He said, look, let's take a look at SAP, Oracle, Microsoft, IBM. They've gone through a lot of these same issues also.
Right, exactly. Everyone's going through it. It's in the software space.
All right, he's Steven Saber of the Pulse Network. I'm Butch Stearns. You are watching CMS-Connected. We're back with more right after this.
Your job is to cut through the noise. To succeed, you need to reach out to your target audiences in real time with messages that speak to them. You can't let technology get in the way of your brand. That's the spirit. First Spirit is a powerful solution that helps you effectively communicate and engage with your target audience. Get an awesome ROI. Success in the market means your message got through to the right people at the right time in the right way. And that's why you need First Spirit. Get started with digital marketing. Visit www.espirit.com now.
Welcome back to CMS Connected, everybody. I'm Butch Stearns of the Pulse Network. We're here today talking about open source versus proprietary. And we bring in two guests from each side of that debate, if you will. I want to let you know right away, there will be no champion. We won't crown anybody a champion in this debate, as most of you in the CMS space probably know, because it's an ongoing conversation that digs up passion on both sides. And to have this conversation, Steven Saber of the Pulse Network is back, and Bryan Soltis joins us from Kentico. Hi, Bryan.
Morning. Hello, Butch.
Good to have you here.
Thank you very much. It's great to be part of this show.
So let's talk about your role as a technical evangelist at Kentico.
So really what that means is I get to use a lot of big words, and I get to talk to developers and make some interesting projects. What my job is at Kentico is to empower and encourage the development community to use our product and to get the answers to what they're looking for. We have a lot of developers that do a lot of different type of projects, and we have a ton of support and a number of resources that are available to them, but sometimes talking to an experienced developer is really the only way to get the answer that you need. Right. And that is what I facilitate within our community. I host user groups, I write a lot of blogs, webinars, and I really just reach out in any way that I can to provide the answers to people and to help them achieve their goals in their projects.
Great. So Bryan Soltis is here from Kentico, from the proprietary side and from the open source side. We go all the way over to Amsterdam and we bring in Arjé Cahn, who is the CTO and co-founder of Hippo. Hello, Arjé.
Hello, good day. Good to be talking to you guys. Good to be on the show.
Yeah, good to have you here. And from the open source side, let's dive right into this now. What's important to note from a Hippo perspective and when we get into this debate, so to speak, from the open source side?
Well, it's our vision fundamentally is open source is about access. It's about access to the software so you can try it out, access to the code so you can customize it, integrate it, and ultimately it's about being in control over the software you have in your digital environment. Actually, customization and integrations are incredibly important to us. It also came up a little earlier in the show in a report on the pay points of CMSs, and we fundamentally believe you should be able to take our code and integrate it and customize it and see if it works in your software landscape to be absolutely sure before you actually go in and buy our services and our support that it actually works in your environment. So, we go as far as giving our code to everyone out there, not just on request, but all the time. You can go to our website right now, download our product, try it out, customize it, integrate it with whatever marketing applications you may have, and then decide, to buy into our subscription and support. And finally, we'll give you the training you need. We'll give you the professional services you may require. So we solve all these 3 pain points right there. And it's fundamentally about being able to shape your digital strategy in a way that makes sense and it makes you really stand out in today's competitive digital landscape. And with proprietary CMSs, it all sounds like you get a lot of functionality out of the box, but in the end, you're always going to be restricted to what functionality the vendor dreamt up for you.
So Arjé, you talk about access versus restriction, and that's the philosophical debate that people have when they're thinking about open source versus proprietary. But in reality, as you actually get to delivery and you think about clients that are using the service, I want to ask you, and I guess, Bryan, I'll ask you first, in a practical sense, is that real? It sounds good in theory. In practice, is that really what's going on?
I tell you, really, in my opinion, and in my experience, I have 16 plus years of doing development. I've used open source, I've used closed source, I've used somewhere in between. I've made my own, and Arjé is actually correct in some of his points in that really it comes down to integration and your ability to extend these products to achieve your business goals. And while I think both open source and closed source offer that ability to the developers and to these projects, developers don't develop just because they want to do something fun and interesting. They have to achieve some business goal for their company or for their client. And to me, the main point and the main difference between the two is I can't rely on a community to produce information for me. I need to be able to get an answer to solve a business problem when I have it. And that's why I think proprietary software really becomes much more valuable and usable to a company and the projects that they do. You can't simply, if you had a $500,000 budget to produce a project, do you really want to not use a system that when there's a problem you have someone to call and get the support that you need? That's a huge deal to me, and as a developer, not having the answers that I need impedes my ability to produce my project, and it limits me from being able to achieve the goals of the project and to meet my budgets and to meet the requirements. And so that's really what it boils down to. One of the biggest points to me is having some support from the company side to be there when you need it.
Arjé, would you agree or disagree that access is important and that access is less available when you're talking open source?
Oh, well, of course, we believe that an open source community is a great resource. It provides you with a certain level of support, but especially for the enterprise, it doesn't have to come at the cost of professional services. We very strongly believe in our open source community edition, but we also recognize that many of our enterprise clients, though they love the open architecture, the flexibility of the platform, the scalability, and the community that we offer, they need the guarantees of a professional support team, just like Bryan just mentioned. And that's our business model. So on one hand, we're an open source product, and we give you all of the benefits of that, the flexibility, the ability to integrate, to scale up, and to allow you to build a strategic digital direction for your company. But at the same time, we are there to back you up and to help you out and give you the training, the support you need as a company. We're just a commercial company like anyone else, so we care for our customers. We want to make sure that your project ultimately is a success.
Arjé Cahn is the CTO and co-founder of Hippo. Joining us on this edition of CMS Connected, I'm Butch Stearns of the Pulse Network. In studio is Steven Saber, CEO of the Pulse and co-host for this edition, CMS Connected, and Bryan Soltis from Kentico. So let me go to the broader question of free versus pay, because I think a lot of people think of open source versus proprietary as that. But as Steven, you and I were talking about, and we'll bring Bryan into this too, is that while that is something you're always concerned about, free versus pay, the cost of free is not free, right?
Well, free is not free at all, and that's part of the issue, right? So, and Arjé brought it up, it's access is an interesting way to think about it, because when you're looking at a project, you're looking at the total cost of ownership, and total cost of ownership has to do with the services that are required, the implementation, the development, and also the support that goes with it. And when you start to factor that in, the free versus pay becomes a small part of the decision process. And really, you're going into that question of philosophically this question of having a company to reach out to that I can get quick answers versus access to a community and that's doing large development and open source code that I can work with and manage.
So, Bryan, when you look at proprietary software enhancements, they can be expensive and they need to be customized, and that can be costly, right?
Right, and there's obviously no argument against that. I mean, custom software is custom software. Right. If you're going to take something and you're going to build something custom with it, you're obviously not a turnkey solution. You're achieving a very specific goal, and with that comes the cost of the development of it to do so. So one of the biggest differences I see between proprietary and open source, and Arjé actually alluded to this a little bit earlier, is that yes, we have defined a certain number of functionality and features of our product, even at Kentico, that accomplish some specific tasks. Now, we do that, but it's, in my opinion, that's actually not necessarily a bad thing. You probably hit 80 to 90% of the people with the features that you have. Right. Of course, there's 10, 20% that may not get addressed. But with that 80 or 90%, they're getting those features because we have dedicated people inside of our company that is what they do. They look at the industry, they talk to experts, they talk to our clients, they talk to people that didn't choose our product, and what we're doing is we're continually shaping our functionality and features and shaping our product to achieve and to accommodate the most broadest reach of requirements that we can. And this is a continual process, and because we're proprietary, we actually have the funding by way of the sale of our product to fund this activity, and this is an ongoing thing that we're constantly retooling it to try to achieve and provide the most successful and profitable product for ourselves and our customers.
So Arjé, I love where you're going almost with every single one of your answers. You're starting with a digital strategy, because you really have to start with fundamentally what you're trying to accomplish, don't you, here when you're talking about all of this?
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely, Butch. And I think the ultimate benefits of open source are strategic. It's not about free versus paid. It's about the ability for you to respond to changes in the market. The digital space is changing so quickly. Not having the flexibility to respond exactly how you need costs money. And not being able to customize, not being able to tweak, change, and to not being able to change your mind, is very expensive in the long run. And that's where we're at, where we as a company are at. We want to allow our customers to be agile and flexible. That's what we battle on: agility and flexibility. So our customers can change their minds, can change course. We give them all the code. We allow them to integrate our software with whatever system they already have in place. So, in the end, our customers are able to innovate on top of our platform and be competitive in their markets. And I'd like to respond to what Bryan said just before, because I think I need to debunk this myth of open source not having any support. I think, look at our company. We've built a very sustainable company. We've been around for 15 years, providing support on an open source platform, doing that incredibly well. We have really, really great customers. We have great partnerships. We've signed a partnership with EMC earlier this year. We have very good analyst coverage. We're a very decent company, and we take great pride in supporting our customers and making sure that they in the end succeed in their digital strategy. That's our goal, really. So I largely disagree with this idea of community versus commercial entity that provides support. We have built our business model exactly upon that idea. The only difference is we're also giving away our code, so you can look at it and you can have all these many eyeballs all around the world, trying to find bugs and security holes in our platform. So there's just a much better quality of our platform as a result of that. But Butch, yes, it starts with a digital strategy.
So that's some great points. Thank you for bringing that up, Arjé. And I do recognize that several open source platforms are providing more and more in the way of support because, again, I've been doing it a long time, and I'm used to the days of when an open source meant there was a message board, and that was really your only option to get an answer. And you post there hoping that somebody will respond so you can get the answer that you need. I do recognize that several open source communities and products are developing more and more established support mechanisms to counteract that exact issue. My real point is, and in talking to that is, we as a proprietary, we have the benefit of actually having that message board functionality as well as the paid support that someone can do.
Well,
and
same here.
They can contact us in a number of ways, and that just gives more and more features and more information available to them. Now, in the way of giving away your code, we certainly have some proprietary code that is in some of our encrypted, packaged DLLs. But in regards to Kentico, I would say probably only 30 to 40% of the platform actually is in these DLLs. Everything else is in code that is freely available for anyone that wants to use it when they set up their project with it, and to extend it. I mean, that's what I did for the last 7 years as a custom software provider developing on Kentico. All I did was extend the platform. And then for the companies that need the full-scale customization, we actually offer a full source code option. Now, it does come at a price because we're essentially giving them access to our proprietary code. However, it is available to our enterprise-level clients that need this very large-scale ability to customize the platform and achieve some specific goal. So I'm not necessarily saying that anything in open source is devalued. I just, in my opinion, from an enterprise level, I think that there's a space for open source and there's a space for proprietary. And as a developer with several, nearly 2 decades in the business of developing, I recognize where one fits better than the other. It just, in my opinion, and in the enterprise space, I feel if you do want to achieve the digital marketing, all these features, all these well-connected integrated systems, you have to build that on a foundation that you can get the support when you need it. Otherwise, you're not going to be successful. And I've only found that in the proprietary space.
So let me ask you a question, because one of the benefits that Arjé was talking about was being able to be agile and responsive. And that's he claims one of the big benefits of being an open source. So you're now saying that, no, wait a minute, you can be agile and responsive using a proprietary platform.
Oh, absolutely not. I think you can, that's a development methodology, agile or Scrum or whatever you want to do. But if you want to get a higher level than that and more just being responsive and being able to change, to accommodate the needs of your clients, being from a product standpoint, being able to add a feature that somebody wants, certainly. Proprietary, the larger you are, the harder it is to make a turn. Big boats don't turn as fast as small little ships. So it does take us a little bit longer, but our turns are much more calculated, and they're designed to hit the most broadest market as possible. They're actually, in my opinion, and I've worked in small companies and large companies, turning too fast, too often, you lose focus and you lose the direction of where it is you're trying to head. So you can actually be too agile in some occasions. However, I think every successful business will need to maintain some level of agility, and we at Kentico certainly do provide companies the ability to do that with our software. We just may not necessarily have it as open as an open source platform, but we do have the benefit of a company-backed, information and API and documentation on it to keep you always facing in the right direction.
So let me try and reset a baseline here, because I'm curious about something.
These guys are playing too nice, by the way.
Well, I was going to say, and that's why I want to see whether they agree or disagree on a point that Bryan, because we need to get to the heart of this. Bryan made a statement, Arjé, that there's a place for both, and there's a decision time when one makes sense versus the other. I think that's what you said. You did say place for both.
Absolutely.
So Arjé, let me ask a question. Arjé, do you agree or disagree with the statement that there's a place for both, and there's a time and place when one makes sense versus the other?
Big sigh.
I think, Butch, we got ourselves an answer.
I don't know. I think I got the feeling Bryan is just, repeating the things I said before. It's kind of funny. It feels like, here's a proprietary vendor who built a business model on all the concepts of open source, but they closed their code base. That's kind of like what it feels to me. I don't get that. I fundamentally believe that you need to have people out there, be able to look at your code and not shy away from it. And of course, as Bryan mentioned, you can afterwards you can look at the code. You can get it once you have an enterprise subscription. I think that's literally what you just said. And that's just it's not a detail. It's not an afterthought. With open source, open source is architected such that it is customizable. It's just an inherent part of the design of open source software. It's what it's built for. It's to be customized, by all these many different people working with all these different components in the systems, to be customizable for various needs of various members of a very extensive community. So that's one. The second thing is that with open source, there's that community taking the code, customizing, enhancing it, and then contributing it back. And because it's all shared, everyone reaps the benefits. And of course, there are limits to that. Maybe not everyone wants to contribute everything back to the community, and that's fine. I don't have a very, very philosophical idea about that. Sometimes you want to keep stuff private because it's competitive for you, and that's all good with me. Right?
Sure. So to that point, you are correct, and that is one of the most fundamental differences between open and closed source, in my opinion, is that the customizations largely in the open source community are actually created and implemented by the community, which is fantastic for innovation, and you get these very very varying changes and modifications and customizations and things people haven't even thought of, and that's really good. But when it comes to an enterprise system, I don't think you can build a true enterprise project on something that doesn't have a standardization of the code, a standard way of doing things and a standard way of implementation. Now, obviously, there's deviations that you can make in everything, but they all follow a similar pattern of development and implementation. And from a business standpoint, that's imperative to the success and the longevity of the project, because if the vendor changes, if the developer changes, people come and go, you have to have this standard model of development and standard code base that people are familiar with, that they can rely on when they bring in a new vendor or a new developer to continue that, not having to figure out the various customizations and whatever was in that developer's mind at the time, because they had the full source code. They've modified it. You can't apply any update to it. You can't apply any hotfix to it to address any security issue. You now have to dig through that code. That's one of the biggest reasons, in my opinion, where proprietary is very beneficial for those projects, because, again, a large-scale enterprise spending $500,000 or $1 million on a project cannot afford to deal with not being able to apply a security fix. That's going to be, astronomically detrimental to the success and longevity of the project.
Okay, so what makes you think that there is no standardized model of development in open source? I don't buy that, or certainly it doesn't apply to the Hippo community. Once again, there are different systems out there. I wouldn't advise anyone to go out and just download some random open source project that's been around for 2 months and maybe stalled in about in another 6 months or so. But with a system like Hippo, you have a true enterprise look at our customers. It's a true enterprise platform, and all of our developers working in this company, over here and downstairs in the rest of the building, they're all driving the process. They're making sure that the quality of the code is checked. We have a large QA department. We have several teams working on the most prominent features on our roadmap. But the difference is we're doing that in the open, and we're allowing other people to chime in, to respond to what we're doing, to share their opinion, and to tell us when we're doing wrong. And so I I completely disagree with what you just said.
Well,
I think it's
well, I'm
almost-
never suggesting that you don't have those systems there. I mean, we have the exact same things that you have in place too. We have QA, obviously, developers and things like that. And yes, we do reach out to our community. We just have them be our development community. My biggest point, and I guess to probably summarize it all up, you have all of those in place to produce that information and to produce that product, and then you release it. Someone is freely able to take that and completely customize it, which is awesome for them. That is fantastic for them because they can make it do whatever they want to. But if someone else has to come into that code, there's no guarantee of the standardization of that. There's no guarantee that the latest hotfix or the latest update that you, as a corporation, produces to address, this heartbleed bug or whatever the latest security threat is of the week. They may not necessarily be able to apply that because someone has completely, bastardized the entire code base and changed everything that could ever be possible into it. And my point is, as a business and as an enterprise, I would not be willing to assume that risk. I'm not saying that some enterprises don't, because they certainly are able to do that, but my opinion is I wouldn't want to assume that risk.
All right, let's do this for the sake of time. Stephen, you jump in here, and then we're going to give both of you guys a chance for your. Should have had the shot clock.
That was
here
right,
for them
exactly.
going at each other. Go ahead.
Well, I'm curious because, in a way, they're talking about business models that are very similar and yet somewhat different.
Yep.
And so one of the questions that I think a lot of people out there would be asking is this a philosophical debate or a real debate? Are we debating something that really doesn't mean anything at the end of the day, or are we debating something that really means something to me? From a budget point of view, total cost of ownership, does it matter? In the scheme of things, is that free versus paid going to make a difference? In the scheme of things, are the things that one person's saying versus the other really going to make a difference? And so the question I'm going to ask, and I'm going to ask you both, Bryan, I'll ask you first. Actually, yeah, let me ask you first. Okay. If I'm thinking about this decision process, I want to ask myself 3 criteria that will make it clear to me whether or not I should be on this side of the fence or this side of the fence. What are the 3 criteria, the 3 questions that I want to ask myself? Do I want X? Do I need X in order to make the decision? What are those do I needs that are important to me, and being able to make that decision process and figure out which one's right for me?
Absolutely. So I think the very first question I would ask myself is which platform has the most built-in features, and how does that align with the project requirements that I have? And obviously that, you're going to find multiple solutions for that, but that will at least narrow you down. The second is, do you have a standardized platform or product that you're already using internally, that you already have the expertise in-house? And that's maybe the first question, then the second one, because then I think you would probably limit your list down a little bit more. And then the third from there is really how much risk and how much is it worth to you to save, X amount of dollars, depending on the difference between a proprietary and non-proprietary system, if you're drilling down into that specific, debate or that decision, is how much are you willing to assume? And I think that I most certainly think that open source is a viable product for some enterprises, and it's not as if you're cooking bacon with a shirt off. Right. I mean, it's a totally usable product that I think that you can achieve your goals with. But in my opinion, it does have that risk of not having a company behind it. And I think that's the risk that I would weigh within myself to understand what is it I'm willing to assume and what is it I'm willing not to assume.
So do I have the expertise? What are my business goals, and how does the software align? And then risk versus access, and do I want to assume the risk in order to have access? Let me ask you, Arjé, how do you come out on these? What are the 3 principles? And obviously, you see no room, according to what I understand, for why I might go proprietary. But explain to me, what are those 3 questions you're going to ask yourself that would lead you to make that decision and say, okay, this is how I'd make that evaluation?
Right. Okay. So I think the first one is whether you think you are. The first one is evolving needs. Do you, if you're absolutely entirely sure of what you want, and it's not going to change, and you just want to buy a web content management system and have it running for 10 years, and your business is doing great, that's it, fine. But if you have a need to evolve that platform over time, and if you are like me and you don't know what's coming in 2-3 years time from now, and you want to make sure you're ready for that. You're ready to adopt your strategy, to adopt your content management platform and integrate it with all these other systems that may be popping up in a couple of years from now. That's when you need open source. You need the flexibility and the extensibility, the customizability of open source. So that's one, evolving needs. The second one is innovation. If you want to truly innovate, if you want to be competitive in your market, then open source is a really good way to get started with that and build on top of the shoulders of giants and just go on and innovate on top of it. And the third one, this is more almost like a philosophical one, but ultimately, if you have your own developers in-house, or if you are partnering with, if you have an implementation partner somewhere that implements your web content management platform, do you trust your developers more than a sales guy, trying to sell you a product in a box? I fundamentally believe that you should give your developers a chance of checking out the code, checking out the product, try it out, see if it does indeed integrate, customize, do all these things you need in your evolving digital strategy before you go out and buy anything, really. So those are my 3 points.
All right, let's wrap this up with, and I will put the shot clock on both of you for this, and we'll start with you, Arjé. Let's wrap this up with sort of a 20, 30-second elevator pitch on, if you are going to pick an open source platform, why Hippo?
Well, fundamentally, because first of all, Hippo is a true enterprise platform. So, we are used to working with organizations that have really tough requirements. Secondly, Hippo is a platform that it's not just a web content management system, it's a content performance platform. We fundamentally believe that you want to drive a digital online website or digital platform which is personalized, relevant for your audiences, that gives them a great customer experience, while at the same time learning from who they are, from how they behave, what they do, so you can improve on that digital ecosystem. And finally, I think our support is just fantastic and phenomenal, and that's really what I'm proud of as an organization, as your company, and all of our customers. They'll tell you that's true. We have a great professional services team, a great service team up here. By the way, I don't know if you can see them. So work with us.
A little bit more than 30 seconds, but that's okay, Arjé. We want to thank.
I apologize.
We want to thank you for your contributions and for rolling your sleeves up in a good-spirited way with Bryan in this debate. Arjé Cahn is the CTO and co-founder of Hippo. Arjé, thanks for your time on CMS-Connected.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me, guys.
All right. So, Bryan, same question for you. If you're going to pick a proprietary software, why go with Kentico?
Really, I actually have an interesting view of it in that I was a developer. I chose to use Kentico. That's why I would say do it. I mean, even from a developer perspective, it's a great platform. It has a ton of features already built into it. And it's much more than a content management system. It's actually a web experience management system. We're lead scoring, marketing automation, A/B testing, MBT testing. These are things that everybody hears and loves the words, but no one really knows what it is yet. Our platform already supports it and does it, and we're getting more and more adoption of that. But really, from a developer standpoint, what I love most about the platform is what it doesn't do, or what it may not come out of the box doing. I can easily extend it to do it. I've made a very successful career out of doing just that over the last 7 years, and now I actually get to help other people doing it. So it's a great platform. It's backed by 24/7, 365 support. It has a phone. You can pick up the phone, call somebody. They will answer. And we have offices around the world on 5 different locations. And it's just a great platform that really cares about the community and wants to provide the best product that we can.
Bryan, thanks for your time today.
Thank you guys very much. I really enjoyed it.
And I thank you, but you love Star of the Pod.
Nobody thanks me.
I'm Butch, Stearns, Steven Saber, Bryan Soltis. You are watching CMS-Connected.
So you've got a great website. Your marketing team spends hours driving visitors to it and nurturing them into leads. And your sales team spends hours collecting, qualifying, organizing, and chasing those leads. Sales wants to focus on what they do best. selling, and marketing wants to get on with what they do best, creating innovative campaigns. But how do you make both teams happy? The solution is marketing automation.
Time now for our Spotlight segment on this edition of CMS Connected. And in this edition of the Spotlight segment, where we take a closer look, put the spotlight on a vendor, if you will, we're going to review BrightSpot. BrightSpot was founded in 2008 by AOL executives David Gang and Lisa Bowden. It was born out of Perfect Sense Digital with locations in Reston, Virginia and Atlanta, Georgia. It's a full-service product company that originally created and now actively supports the BrightSpot CMS platform. Such leading companies as Coca-Cola, Univision, Walmart, and the Special Olympics are deploying BrightSpot. And we bring in Sunny Lenarduzzi once again to review BrightSpot. Hi, Sunny.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Excellent. What do we need to know about BrightSpot that I haven't already said?
I mean, you said a lot, so thanks for taking away most of the stuff I was going to talk about. But no, I think probably one of the most interesting things about BrightSpot and one of its biggest differentiating factors is that it comes from the Perfect Sense digital agency, and that comes with years of experience on the customer side of things and gaining intel into what their customers really needed out of a CMS platform. And the interesting thing is they actually don't call BrightSpot a CMS platform. They call it a user experience platform because it's kind of part of the whole CMS solution. So in a couple of ways, it's a bit of a hybrid. So like I said, and like you said, born out of Perfect Sense Digital, which means that that company offers both products and services. And the services side of things, it offers design and content and product management. But then on the product side of things, that's where BrightSpot comes in, and they also offer 2 other products as well. But also it's a bit of a hybrid because it's open source, so anyone can go in and download it, and they encourage their users to contribute to the code base and the environment. But also they have a set of enterprise plugins to help connect different pieces of information together and deliver business solutions that are tailored to the customer needs. So really interesting kind of amalgamation of a lot of different things that we're seeing in this space, and a few things that really differentiate them from some of the really big competitors out there.
What industries does BrightSpot excel in?
Well, I found this really interesting because my background's in traditional media and broadcasting, and that's really where they excel. They excel in storytelling. So they've worked with traditional media publications in the sense where, old school magazines and print are trying to get into the digital space. And BrightSpot really excels in allowing these companies to disseminate these massive amounts of information in a really quick and efficient way, in a really streamlined way. But what they also do, like I said, corporate storytelling is another place that they really excel. So that's where they've worked with Coca-Cola and Walmart to really reinforce the brand and to tell their stories in a visually appealing way. So yeah, I would say publishing is kind of where they really their focus really is. But on the B2B side of things, their multi-site capabilities are extremely attractive, and I know that's a space and a market they're moving into pretty aggressively.
So is their mentality from an agency side and their storytelling fundamentals, is that part of what's a differentiator for them?
Yeah, for sure. I think, working with places like US News and World Report and National Geographic and doing really well and knocking it out of the park with them has really let them stand out in that space. However, I would say probably the biggest differentiating factor for them is if you look at, I would say, their main competitor, Adobe Experience Manager. Obviously, the licensing cost is a little bit lower when you use BrightSpot versus Adobe Experience Manager. And also, the time to market is kind of unbeatable. It's really impressive. They put out US News and World Report in 5 months from start to finish. That's obviously going to let them stand out above their competition as well. But I just think the flexibility that they offer too, because they are a bit of a smaller company, they really work with their customers and tailor what their customers want and need out of the products and services.
Partners that are most complementary integrating with BrightSpot.
Yeah, I think the main two are DevIR, and that's something that focuses on building enterprise backend systems and web solutions, and really focus on open source technology. And then Eastbank, which is another system integrator, and it's really focused on cloud, mobile, and business intelligence. But I think compared to something like a Sitecore, Brightspot really takes a less is more philosophy. So they're not interested in having a whole bunch of different integrators. They're just really focused on curating kind of the cream of the crop for their customers' needs. So they don't have a ton, but the ones that they do have are extremely effective.
All right, so let's talk about probably the most exciting part of this from a Brightspot perspective, the new iteration or next iteration of their platform, Brightspot 3.0. It's not a secret. It's already out in a couple of places, right? But officially it gets launched at the end of the summer?
Yes, it officially launches at the end of the summer. And as I said, or as you mentioned earlier, Univision is one of their big customers or clients, and they're actually on 3.0 right now in beta. So it's they're one of the first ones to try it out. And they've also deployed 3.0 for Politico's new platform, The Agenda. So that's also another example of it. But all of their customers that are currently using the older version will be upgraded to the newer version by the end of the summer, and anybody who works with Brightspot now will be upgraded to the newer version. And the great thing about the new version is it's a whole new UI. And some of the concepts that are being introduced in the new version that weren't in the last one are personalization, delivering localized content. So that means anything that's based on geo-targeted information or beacons, and then also mobile apps on demand. So really powerful things that they're stepping up their game with for this new version.
So Sunny, sort of a final wrap-up question, if you will. You do these spotlights, you review all these companies, you've looked into Brightspot, you've told us a ton about them already, but if you had to sum it all up, all of these companies face challenges from competitors, you live in the space, what sticks with you, good or bad, about Brightspot now that you've reviewed them?
I think what sticks with me the most is where they've come from, and I'm really interested to see how that tailors where they're headed. I think it's also interesting that they don't own the CMS space. They're not, although it's called Brightspot CMS, they're not owning that space. They're owning the user experience. And in my opinion, that's where all of these companies and all of these competitors are headed to, because it's something that even 5 or 10 years ago wasn't entirely a main focus for a lot of corporations, but now with the introduction of social media and just the digital space as a whole, your user experience is what's most important, because people will tell you immediately and they'll tell their friends if it's not friendly and they don't have patience for a bad user experience. So I think that's something that I'm really interested to see how Brightspot really caters to that. And I think there's a possibility for them, if they strictly focus on that niche, to really become a leader in that space, which I think that space is going to grow exponentially in the next couple of years.
Great review, Sunny. Thanks for your time as always.
Thank you.
All right, Sunny Lenarduzzi of Falcon Software in this Spotlight segment reviewing Brightspot here on CMS-Connected.
Your job is to cut through the noise. To succeed, you need to reach out to your target audiences in real time with messages that speak to them. You can't let technology get in the way of your brand. That's the spirit. First Spirit is a powerful solution that helps you effectively communicate and engage with your target audience. Get an awesome ROI. Success in the market means your message got through to the right people at the right time in the right way. And that's why you need First Spirit. Get started with digital marketing. Visit www.espirit.com now.
All right, time now for our CMS Insider segment on this edition of CMS Connected, and we do it with Steven Saber, CEO of The Pulse, normally Scott Lewer, offering insights into the CMS industry. So for our audience, it's a little refreshing.
Thank you.
Perspective
Thank you, Butch.
to get from the CEO of The Pulse. All right, we're going to look at an article written by Tiffany Elliott from Digital Clarity Group, and it's an interesting one. The title of the article, What's with All the Agency Reviews? And just to sum it up, to get right to your insight on this CMS Insider, companies are, and this is what Tiffany says, and I'm paraphrasing, but companies are reviewing their agencies more and more now. They're reviewing the worthiness of them, and she gives some guidelines of what service providers need to do to be relevant to their companies now. First question, why all these reviews of their agencies?
Well, I think there's a couple of reasons. The main reason is because customer demands are changing. Right? Customers are asking for very different demands. They want that customer experience, that customer engagement that they're looking for on a consistent basis throughout the entire experience with your organization, and therefore they're asking different things of the company, which is requiring the company to have different things of their service providers.
Okay, so she points out that companies like Volkswagen, Coca-Cola, even Best Buy now, are not only reviewing their agencies, a lot of them are taking stuff in-house. She then points out that service providers, she sees three major trends that service providers need to do now within things. One, service providers are becoming an extension of your marketing department. Two, service providers are helping you define organizational vision and strategy. And three, service providers are helping with technology expertise. You need to know it all now.
Well, and think about it, that used to be three different service providers.
Right.
And now all of a sudden you're looking for all of that in one, because those three things all really come together in one set of needs and one set of requirements. So your challenge to the service provider is, can you solve and help me on all three parts in a way that's consistent to the customer demand that's being asked of me? As a service provider, you're being challenged to say, how can I provide all of this in a consistent way and prove that I'm not only best of breed in what I'm able to do, but also best of breed in all different parts, because that's what people are looking for.
So what's the answer for a service provider when one of my largest clients comes to me and said, I need you to be an expert in all of this?
Well, the first answer is get ahead of it. You know it's here, you know it's happening, so don't sit back, don't rest on your laurels. Don't think, well, I'm great at vision and strategy, I don't need to worry about the rest. You know your clients have this problem, you know that the customer is going to push your clients to have this problem, so get ahead of it, ask, get prepared, and then go to them with the answer before they ask the question, if you can. If you can't, when they do ask the question, you want to have a complete, clear answer that you can express and that you can show examples of that will gain confidence right away. Because if you're one of those, oh, we can do it anyway kind of things, people aren't going to buy into that and they're going to start to make different decisions.
So this is an exaggeration, what I'm about to say, but not much. As a business leader, you learn to say yes and then figure out how to do it later at time. So again, from a service provider perspective, if somebody comes to you and says, can you do this? Do you tell them yes and then try to figure out how to do it afterwards?
Well, you have to be able to say yes. So if you don't know how to say yes, you have to say yes and then figure out, or you should know the answer before they ask the question. So the biggest challenge for business leaders today is to really know where your customers are going and always be one. I always say be a half a step ahead. If you're a full step ahead, sometimes you may be too far. 2 steps ahead is scary. But if you're always a half a step ahead of your customer and you know what that question they'll ask is, you know how that question can be answered, that's really what you're trying to do. But if you don't have it, you have to be able to say yes, otherwise you're pigeonholed and you run into trouble.
All right, wrap it up with this. As Tiffany says in this article, the relationship between organizations and agencies is changing. The 3 trends that she mentioned are just 3 of the ways that service providers are adapting. So what advice do you have for agencies in this insider segment? What advice do you have for companies that are questioning their agencies, that they have to get into place to provide excellent customer experience and customer service?
Well, so the first for agencies, what I'd say is, first of all, map it out. Map out the industry you're solving, map out the business problems people will be asking, and then figure out how you can plug each hole with a solution set that's all part of one big answer. And be able to present that and get ahead of it. Start to create content, start to create messaging, start to create stories that'll give credibility that you know how to solve those problems, and then create case studies to support it so that you get out of your comfort zone and you can solve everything that's there. For the companies, what I'd recommend is, again, create that same kind of map, but identify where your needs are. Identify whether it needs to be all in one provider or whether you need specialty and solutions and specialists in each one of them and how they fit together. But map that out so you can draw the whole picture of how everything's going to come together, how you're asking for one simple solution, because again, your customer is asking for that experience. You need to ask for the same.
Nice job, Stephen.
Thank you very much, Butch.
All right, I want to thank our guest on this edition of CMS-Connected, Sunny Lenarduzzi, as always, in our Spotlight segment, Arjé Cahn from Hippo, and Bryan Soltis from Kentico. Our next show comes up with the subject of who owns marketing? Who's got ownership of it? CRM or CMS? So that'll do it on this edition of CMS-Connected. For Stephen Saber, I'm Butch Stearns. So get connected and stay connected on CMS-Connected. We'll see you next time.